Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka MBT, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis! That's right! Yu-Gi-Oh! Will be at Genesis, courtesy of the RBET. Secondly, there's a new format called Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis. So what's going on here? Earlier today, Yu-Gi-Oh! Released guidance for a new format called Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis, and alt formats are not new in Yu-Gi-Oh! Frustratingly, they've always kind of capped out at the side event at a YCS level. We got that big document with a bunch of guidance that was basically a way for OTSs to sponsor non-meta nights, plus Time Wizard, which got some really incredible YCS event coverage, followed by completely destroyed for time travel, which may or may not exist depending on what regional you go to and who's running it. They've done stuff like generation duels in the past, which unfortunately capped out at the YCS level. Rivalry of Warlords is really fun and could be integrated into Master Duel today, but instead it's capped out at the YCS side event level. But Genesis looks to be a little different. That's because not only do they have a novel structure for side events at a YCS, they also have a dedicated Genesis YCS planned for 2026. I imagine once they've ironed out all the kinks. This rocks. It's super cool. And I know that I am known as kind of a generational hater, but you have to understand that's just because Konami keeps making the wrong decision. This is something I'm really optimistic for. And the reason for that has a lot to do with my background as a Magic the Gathering player, where they are making new formats every 30 seconds. You know, Wizards is constantly throwing out, like, do you guys like Timeless or Alchemy or Brawl? Things like Commander started as formats designed by players. They're always inventing new spins on existing formats, more Mirror Vig, Tiny Leaders, and Canadian Highlander, which bears a striking resemblance to what we're talking about today. So let me read you the rules of Genesis. The Genesis rules are no pendulums and no links. This is a little frustrating for reasons we're going to get into momentarily, but everything else is allowed. It's MR2 mat setup, no pendulum zones, no extra monster zones. You don't have a ban list. Instead, each individual card is associated with a point total, and your deck has to work under a certain point total. So maybe you do get to play like Pot of Greed, but doing so cuts you off of playing really powerful cards. Some of you may recognize this is Canadian Highlander from Magic, and I gotta tell you, that's a damn fine system to be ripping off. You get to do a lot of really fun stuff. We'll talk about what this enables and what it specifically excludes momentarily. Anything that's not on their list of 505 cards at present costs 0 points, and they expect the standard point cap to be 100. That's what they're gonna run at events, but if you want to do like a non-meta Genesis event at your OTS, you can like cut it to like 20. If you want to do like a busted ass bullshit event, you can go to like 1500. So a lot of leeway just by adjusting the point total, not necessarily by adjusting a new rule set. And that's one of the things I really like about this is it's so scalable, right? As you want different things to be playable, you can do so just by changing one dial rather than like 40 different things at once. Let's talk about what's enabled by this ban list. The ban list is long. I mean, there's no way we're going to be able to get through all of it. I just kind of want to talk about the larger philosophy when it comes to the cards on this list. So you'll notice just by scrolling that a significant amount of cards have a point total of 100. A significant amount have like ones that end in 0, and some of them have a negligible point cost. Just to give you like a heads up, Butterfly Dagger Elma, for instance, has a point total of 1. You know, why would they ever do that? You only get 40 to 60 cards. You're never going to get up to 100 off those. Well, you know. So first and foremost, they've basically scraped the list of philosophically frustrating cards from Trinity format. If you're familiar with Trinity format, they've banned every floodgate regardless of its utility. Now that includes a lot of really annoying shit like there can be only one, but it also includes shit no one plays like Angel 07, which here is at the maximum point total 100. This is really cool. First and foremost, I think no one likes playing under huge restrictive effects, and if you're going to decrease the power level of the format, the cards that exist to beat floodgates aren't going to be as available. And for that reason, I do like that they have taken almost everything out to pasture. You know, you can just look here, no Christia, no Eschatos, no Protoss, no Scythe. It's nice. I like it a lot. Secondly, let's talk about the 100s for another minute here. You'll notice that 100 is permissible in a deck. You could make a deck that has Abyss Dweller in it, but then you couldn't put any other pointed cards in there. This is important not only for floodgates, but also for cards like Arcana Force the World, right? This is a powerful FTK tool, but if you play it, what they've done is a significant amount of the enablers for these FTK cards are at a single point. So let's say like, I imagine this is a scenario that might come up. Butterfly Dagger Elma is an infinite combo with Gearfried, right? So if they put Gearfried at 100, almost no one's going to be affected. But if you want to make an FTK with Gearfried and Butterfly Dagger Elma, you aren't able to, even though there's a negligible cost associated with Elma, right? You see what I'm saying here? It's an interesting way to make it so you can't play pairs of cards together that are problematic only if you have both of them. Another cool thing this does is enables you to play busted ass, baller ass cards. Let me just get to, I think, probably the most obvious one here. Graceful Charity is legal at 40 points. 40 points is pretty low in terms of cards this powerful. You could play 2 copies of this card and still retain 20 points for your deck. You could not play it in a deck with Glow Up Bulb, which specifically has boxed out scenarios like this by being not at 20, but shit, what the, sorry, I should 21! I really like that in the same vein as Generation Duels, this enables you to play extremely powerful old cards under very specific circumstances, right? Like if you kneecap your deck, you are allowed to play busted shit. So I said we'd talk a little bit about Link and Pendulum being cut off, and I'll do that now. Link's being cut off makes perfect sense. I know from trying to curate alternative formats, I had a pretty big hand in Trinity, but also, of course, rotation. If you enable Link monsters to be played, it is so hard to prevent people from just making decks that play those Link monsters, right? Significant amount of Link monsters are just too generic to ever be able to box them out without a specific list of legal links. And there's a ton of decks that spam bodies to the board. Regardless of, you know, their intended outcome, they will spam bodies to the board. They are meant to be in service of, like, making an Xyz monster or something, but they will spam bodies to the board for the express purpose of making Link monsters. And unless you box out Links, that's just going to happen. I personally am not one of those, like, no Link Xyz synchro guys. I think Links are really cool for the game, and they really open up a lot of interesting design space, but I won't deny that they also tend to make alt formats impossible to curate. So I understand that. Pendulums, I'm a little more frustrated about. This is obviously just meant to be like a selling point for Yugi boomers who hate pendulums. There is no real reason for pendulums to be boxed out here. I guess it's because with no extra monster zone and no pendulum zones, there's no real way to do it, but it wouldn't be difficult to just be like, okay, in this format, you can special summon pendulum monsters to main monster zones. That would also be fine just because special summoning pendulum monsters to main monster zones for the purpose of making Xyz monsters is okay. Like in this format, a deck like Pepe would not be the best deck in the format. The reason they're doing it is to satiate Yugi boomers, and unfortunately doing so cuts off a lot of really interesting decks. This would be a great format for Abyss Actor, for instance, and unfortunately we just don't have an opportunity to do that. You know, all of that said, I am really excited to brew in this. So what's good in this is really hard to say at first glance. I think you all should be thinking about it in these terms. Decks that don't use links are already going to be possibly playable. A K9, for instance, is something that I immediately was like, oh my god, just making Ripper every turn seems crazy. Of course, they've, you know, done their best to prevent that from happening by putting some of the K9s on here. You can see Ripper's at 20, Azuna's at 20, and Lupus is at 5, which is pretty powerful. Cards that don't play particularly well against hand traps are also suspect for playability. You can see that Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, for instance, is at 15, and that's going to add up. A playset of that costs 45. Now, there is a whole suite of playable hand traps underneath the current playable hand trap list that could conceivably be playable. Like, you might have to be playing around like Skullmeister and stuff. Let me see if Skullmeister is on here. But still, you know, a different suite of hand traps being playable opens up opportunities for other decks to be playable. Not seeing Skullmeister, so, you know, consider that in your lineups. And then thirdly, decks that are enabled by cards that are currently banned are definitely interesting to think about. Doug, for instance, got advance notice of this because he is a Yugi tuber that is shackled to the bloated corpse of Konami, and for that reason, he has built a Fabled deck that looks really cool because none of the Fabled cards have been hit because they're bad, but Graceful Charity is legal. So he gets to play 2 copies of Graceful Charity, and if he draws it, he just gets to go balls to the wall, right? Strategies like that have a really incredible possibility of potentially seeing play. I think I'm probably going to spend like the next maybe like 2 or 3 streams just specifically brewing for this format. I know that sounds stupid, but you know, I mean, it's either this or Master Duel. And that brings me to the final thing I want to talk about, which is Master Duel integration. This obviously obviously seems like it was designed to be integrated into Master Duel. All you have to do is set a point total associated with some number of cards and be like, here's what's legal to play. And again, you can just turn the dial. This week, there's an alt format where Genesis is going to be 40 points instead of 100. This week, it's going to be 1,200, and you can play busted ass, broken ass shit. No, I'm really, really excited to be brewing with this. I think there's a lot of awesome stuff that can come from it, and I just can't wait to see what's playable. Okay, DPE is money, Plasma is money, Stratos is money, and Darklaw is a lot of money. Well, that's painful, but I think we can still make it work. Let me know your thoughts about the format. Is there stuff that you think is obviously going to be good, obviously broken, stuff they should have boxed out, done a better job with? What are you expecting to play? Will you be attending the Genesis YCS? Is it something you'd be interested in? Would you want to see content about this format? You know, I'm always looking for something to spice up sitting on Master Duel and playing against Malice, and this seems like a really good opportunity to do this. And I as a finale, I want to say, you know, please do approach this with an open mind. I know firsthand how hard it is for Yu-Gi-Oh players to stomach anything but the one way to play Yu-Gi-Oh, even during periods when Yu-Gi-Oh is really bad. You know, the landscape of Yu-Gi-Oh is littered with things like Yu-Gi-Oh, Yu-Gi-Oh 2, the PPG list, the ARG list, that were just so poorly received and met with such hatred without anyone even attempting to understand if it was going to be a net good or bad for the game. So please do not knee-jerk your way into hating this. Actually think about it for a little bit, you know, like decide if this is something you might be interested in doing, playing, caring about. And I'd urge you to at least do and play and care about it a little bit as you make that decision, instead of just regurgitating what a Yugi tuber told you. Thank you for watching a video where a Yugi tuber told you something. Bye-bye.